Now, I've already responded to Community Corner 25 in more informal fashion. Go and look that video up because I think I make some pretty good points, but I wanted to respond more directly to the statements around offense, defense, balancing that, and kind of what those core fundamentals of a MOBA and kind of hero design and cards and stuff like that, how do those interplay? What is my understanding of the fundamental nature of these things? How do they go together? And what kind of connections and kind of important things can we say about these pillars? Amazon is the tried and true way of shopping for anything you need or want at the lowest prices. Support the channel at no cost to you by doing your Amazon shopping through the link in the video description. Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a Paragon guide. I am Sylphin, where we're going to be responding to the community team and the balance team from Epic and providing my thinking, my reasoning behind some of the fundamentals of a MOBA and heroes in a MOBA and itemizations systems in a MOBA. This is meant as constructive feedback, constructive ideas that I want to put forth out there for Epic because that's what they need. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what they need. They need good ideas. They need good ways of thinking. They need those kind of things, not kind of anything else. They understand how people feel. They just need constructive ideas, constructive ways of thinking, and that's what I'm trying to do here. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about the three fundamental pillars, I think, of hero design and kind of like the whole MOBA gameplay. And hopefully, you guys can see this, and I hope that this makes sense. So, in my head, ladies and gentlemen, my understanding of MOBA heroes, of MOBA gameplay, besides the 3 lanes and the map objectives and stuff like that, I think that there's 3 pillars of hero designs and how the teams work in a MOBA. Those 3 pillars in this sort of teeter-totter, 3-way teeter-totter is offense, control, and defense. Those 3 terms that I've put there are pretty self-explanatory. Offense. Offense allows faster economy, objectives to be taken or taken faster, right? Raptors can't be taken unless you have damage to deal them, or taken faster. Minions can take the core, it's just you can do it that faster. And the elimination of enemy heroes, obviously, yeah, I guess a minion can kill heroes, but usually that's what offense allows you to kill enemy heroes. Control. Control allows manipulation of objectives or heroes in an advantageous manner, hopefully, whether for offense or defensive reasons. You can have offensive control and you can have defensive control. Control is, you're probably thinking like crowd control, stuns, stuff like that. But I'm also talking about mana control. I'm also talking about health control, controlling the health of your friendly team in a defensive manner, or controlling the enemy's mana through Bellica's Void Drone. Control is a much more broad statement than maybe you kind of think initially. Now, defense, this last, is obvious as well. Defense allows increased damage absorption, decreased enemy economy gain from kills, that is a big part of it, and increased sustain. So these are the 3 pillars that I feel govern the fundamental nature of heroes and team compositions and stuff like that. Now, I've mentioned the teeter-totter, a 3-way teeter-totter, and that's how I see these 3 things. If the teeter-totter is 100%, and you bend this teeter-totter in one of these 3 ways, or in a multitude of ways towards one side or one point, then you start to, then that 100% is now split disevenly amongst all sides. So if it was just balanced, if you just let this 3-way teeter-totter sit there, all perfectly balanced, each corner of this triangle would have a third emphasis in terms of what these three things are. Now, if you tip this teeter-totter in any way, you kind of disrupt the balance of each side. So if you want all offense, you tip it to that corner, then you have all offense and no control and no defense. If you looked at this teeter-totter on like horizontally, then you know, all the way down is 100% you know, emphasized, and all the way up is 0%. And so I'm sure you understand what I'm getting at. So if you are all offense, you're no control and no defense, essentially you are a carry or an assassin. These terms that we use, I try to use things that express the idea behind them. Not necessarily, like, terminology is whatever. I mean, you can call these whatever you want, but I hope that the terminology gets an idea across. If you're all offense, you're a carry, either sustained offense, or an assassin, burst offense. If you are all control, whether that's, remember, either crowd control or, you know, health control, damage mitigation control, or mana control, stuff like that. Support. You are kind of like a support. Of course, guys, there's lots of different sort of terminology maybe, but the same idea is there. And if you're all defense, no control, no offense, you're kind of like the typical tank. Now, of course, you can have combinations of these. You know, if you're all offense, and if you're equal parts offense and defense and no control, well, maybe you are a brawler. If you are all offense and all control, then you're super squishy. Maybe you're something called like a specialist. You know, that can do some really cool offense things, but also control. That is probably one of the least good terms that I've used here. And if you're all control and all defense, I could really only think of a support tank as kind of the best way to describe that. Again, terminology can be whatever you want. Hopefully it's just expressing an idea. Now, of course, you don't have to be all into only two things. Of course, within this triangle, there are just very, you know, there's a multitude of different percentages in each three area. You could be 30% offense, 30% control, and 40% defense, right? You could be 80% defense, 10% control, 10% offense. But the point is that you can't have, you know, 50-50-50. There is a trade-off. If you want true defense, well, you can't deal damage as well. If you want all defense, well, then you can't have all control. If you want a ton of control, you have to give up defense or offense. If you want all control and offense, to just control and nuke down somebody, you have to be squishy. That balance, a three-way teeter-totter, has to happen. That should give you a pretty good idea of what this thing is, what this diagram here is, and what it is saying. Now, if you look in the middle here, I've written down that this is the three-way teeter-totter of MOBA fundamentals, in my opinion, and it must start balanced. In the community corner, 25, they said that you have to slightly emphasize offense. And you know what? I absolutely disagree. Essentially, if the teeter-totter is already unbalanced, leaning in one direction, then your decisions in game aren't influencing you know, this natural state, this balanced gameplay, this balanced field, this balanced battlefield that you can then manipulate in certain fashions. Team compositions and in-game builds unbalance this teeter-totter, this 5-person teeter-totter that, you know, if all 5 of you start off right in the middle, and then with your team composition, with the heroes that you pick, with your, you know, with the builds that you build onto these heroes, and you know, you got to execute all of this. Then you unbalance this teeter-totter to suit gameplay, strategy, and metas. This just has to be. If it's leaning in the offense, then you all of a sudden already have an advantage in one area. So why wouldn't I pick heroes that have more control and defense? Since we already have offense, the teeter-totter's already balanced in that direction, well then I can get more control, more defense, and that's exactly what we are seeing. Tons of crowd control. Bellica, Kwong, Narbash, Drongo with his silence, Rampage in the jungle with his, like, the CC train wins, and you just build defense since you already have the offense. This is a perfect analogy to explain what is currently going on. If it's already leaning in offense, then you can simply get control and defense, and then it balances out, and then you can just go to town. Or what happened at the very beginning of version 42, when there was no tank meta, everybody was just building tons of offense because that's what you did pre-version 42, and this teeter-totter was already leaning in that direction. So basically everybody just compounded that already significant unbalance, and that's why it was just a damage meta. It was just so much damage. Time to kill was ridiculously short, and that's what happened because the teeter-totter was already leaning in that direction. That added weight of everybody going offense, offense, offense kind of just broke the teeter-totter. That's I hope that all makes sense. I also want to use this to address the statement of balancing heroes and the itemization. Itemization is just another method of you placing your weight on this teeter-totter. With what they said about you have to balance it one hero versus another. And that is simply, I suppose, a flawed method of trying to see how this teeter-totter balances in the actual game. What happens is you have 5 players versus 5 players working together to battle it out. Use different strategies, put different weights in this teeter-totter to try to get an advantage, counteract enemy advantages, and make up for your own disadvantages. And that's what happens. So you have to think of this whole thing in its entirety. 5 versus 5. And offense already has a natural advantage. You can kill people, you can take objectives, or take them faster. So it already has the advantage. It just straight up does. I mean, it's pretty darn simple. Control is a little bit less of is naturally a little bit less of a thing because A, you have to execute it, but B, it requires by nature follow-up or just other things. I'm sure you understand that. Defense, well, that's a little bit more intuitive, but in other words, offense already has a natural advantage. So in a team composition, and that's what we see in MOBAs and just actually in any game, any RPG, you see a majority of people go offense. You have your few supports, your 1 or 2 tanks, and then the rest is offense just due to its natural emphasis through the game mechanics. So your tank, with them said that you have to balance the tank 1v1 because if you balance them 1v3, then when they are 1v1, then that one person can't do anything. That has to be the case. That has to be the case. A tank has to be able to, through the fact that if they are a true tank, they'll have limited offense and maybe some control, or if they're a support tank, they won't have as much defense and a little bit more control. They have to be able to deal with not just one person from the enemy team, but a large factor of them. That is what a tank, I think, by definition is when you consider the whole entirety of the enemy team of the game, right? World of Warcraft, a tank is supposed to deal with more than one mob, or that one mob, the raid boss, is vastly larger in scale in terms of power and stuff than a multitude of your friendly allies. You kind of get what I'm saying? So a tank simply has to be able to deal with 2, 3, 4 people of the enemy's damage just naturally. Well, I think that is all I wanted to talk about here. And you know what? Just to recap, whether we're talking about hero design, whether we're talking about team composition, or whether we're talking about itemization, this stands. A hero, you know, sure, I suppose a hero can be a third and a third. That'd be one interesting hero. I don't even know what you would classify that hero as, but when you're designing heroes, it has to be this way. There has to be the balance of each of these 3 areas, and you know, it has to be considered when you're talking about team compositions. That's more of a player thing, of course, but you know what? It has to be balanced. Team, and when you're talking about itemization, especially with the 3 with the 3 attributes and just how this itemization system is, high defense oriented cards cannot have a whole bunch of offense and control. A whole bunch of, you know, a high offense card can't have a whole bunch of defense and control. And a high CC card, like imagine if there was a card that did an AoE stun, you know, a straight up AoE stun for 2.5 seconds. It cannot provide you with a ton of offense and a ton of defense. It absolutely cannot. If maybe it was a micro stun for 0.5 seconds, well, maybe it could be a little offense and a little defense. I don't know. It just has to be the checks and balance of this teeter-totter has to be there, and it has to be balanced. It has to be balanced. It cannot start with anything, as that automatically starts off the tools. The tools that we use as players to do this game is then unbalanced. And you know what? It just can't. So there you guys go. That's my thinking, my philosophy, which I've had in the top left here corner of this, an understanding of the fundamental nature of knowledge, nature, and reality. As a teacher, I had to take philosophy was a big part of it. You have to understand how people learn, why people learn, how does what you are doing teach people things, why does that do it that way, so you can make these fundamental connections between the truth behind how people are, how people work, how the brain works, how things function, and then make connections between that, how you implement something, and what those results are. It's really important, and I hope you guys learned something. I hope this is relevant, and I hope this honestly helps somehow. Marillus Action is a game and screen recorder that offers the lowest megabytes per frame, the lowest computer resource usage, and the highest FPS recording. Check the link in the video description to learn more. Well, ladies and gentlemen, please like this video if you like it, dislike it if you dislike it, share it with the community, and of course, guys, subscribe if you guys like this content, especially if you found it useful. Please subscribe so I can do it for you in the future. If you guys have any comments about this, any ideas, leave it down in the comment section below. That's the whole reason why I am doing this video. Leave your constructive ideas down there, ways of thinking, everything. Leave your philosophy, your understanding of the fundamental nature of MOBAs, of heroes, of itemization, of team compositions, of everything down in the comments, because that's what this is all about. We need to share ideas, share our ways of thinking, share our understandings, and we'll just all become better for it. Till next time, like always, guys, stay optimistic and positive.